to newsagents.
No, I mean, look, what happened on Saturday could have been the most disastrous event.
But why did he need you?
Well, that's a matter for, his team to answer, not me. No, listen, it was right that I came.
Right for who?
It was the right thing to do. I have friends. I don't know whether you do or not. Maybe you don't.
Well, we can confirm that she doesn't have any friends. But that was Emily talking to Nigel Farage in Milwaukee, asking the new MP for Clacton what exactly he was doing or how best his constituents' interests were being served by his not being in Essex, not being in Westminster, but being in Wisconsin.
I wonder whether Joe Biden knows where Clacton in Essex is. Probably not. Joe Biden is not having the best of weeks. He put out a tweet saying, "I'm sick." And then there was another tweet about kind of other people giving donations to the Republican Party. But it just read, "I'm sick." And he is sick. He has got COVID. And more voices are saying, you've got to pull out. Is there a cat's chance in hell that he can be the Democratic candidate for president come November? Welcome to the Newsagents. It's John.
It's Lewis.
And it's Emily in Milwaukee.
And we've got to start with what is happening to Joe Biden. We'll come to all the Milwaukee news in a moment. And Maitlis, you had a feast of interviewees last night with...
She's gorged herself. On Republicans.
On Republicans and a Reform MP. Kari Lake, if you don't know her, it is an interview that is so worth listening to, which ends up with Kari Lake telling Emily that she needs to get her head examined or that she's sick or something like
Which
that.
we've been saying for years,
Which we've been saying and trying to point out for a very long time now.
Finally, someone else has said it.
But the Biden situation, it goes from bad to chronic, doesn't it? And apparently the coup de grace, it feels like, is being delivered with apparently the leader of the Democrats in the House, Hakeem Jeffries, along with the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, and with the support of the former Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, have said to Biden, the game is up. It is time to move over and pass the torch on to somebody else.
I mean, it does seem incredible, doesn't it, that on the day that Donald Trump, the official nominee for the Republican Party for president, is about to make his speech, the first time he will have actually made a speech to the crowds here, to the public, since that attempt on his life on Saturday night, all the headlines, all the bulletins are leading on this overnight conversation that we heard between Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. She has let it be known, or people around her have let it be known, there are private chats going on in which she'd shown him polling, suggesting that he can't win. Now, spot the complication there between a private chat that the entire world now knows about. But for a long time, I think Joe Biden had been saying, nobody's shown me polling saying I can't win. And it feels like the pincer movement between Nancy Pelosi, possibly Barack Obama, whose involvement we sort of felt the pressure of about 10 days ago, and Adam Schiff, who is a California congressman who is very closely in the Pelosi field, are starting now to turn up the heat because they're saying it's not just the presidency that's at risk here, it is the House and the Senate too. And they are showing Joe Biden polling, which is incredible. 14 states, I mean, states that should never be swing states now in play, showing gaps between the Republican candidates for Senate and the Democrat candidates for Senate, and sending out the message that actually legislators are going to be losing their jobs because nobody's going to bother to go out and vote.
Yeah, there was a poll the other day which showed that Biden was ahead by only 2 in Virginia. There was a poll that showed that Biden was only ahead by between 2 and 8 in New York. Wow. Now, New York has obviously been Virginia's been Democrat since 2008. New York's been Democrat since 1972. This is an absolute Democrat bastion. So you can guarantee that I think what the Democratic Party is waking up to is not just that, like, Trump might win or win narrowly, but it could be a blowout. It could be a landslide. Yeah. And what that would mean in terms of Trump's power being way augmented and way enhanced by comparison to 2016. And I think what it feels like is happening with Biden is that obviously in the wake of the shooting, some of these voices went away, or some of the pressure started to go away a little bit, with Trump having, actually, the Republicans having a pretty flawless convention in a lot of ways, sort of basking still in the energy from what happened that day, you can feel that is starting to go up again. And what is making it worse is that virtually every interview that Biden does now is making the problem worse still, because although he did a speech the other day which showed that in many ways, when he's talking about some of the things that have interested him for so long, big strategy, strategic questions, he can still be lucid, he can still be fluent, he has made a lot of the right calls, and he can point to that fact. When it comes to things that are as simple and as basic but nonetheless as important as remembering names, finishing sentences, which he can no longer do. His favourite word now is anyway. Whenever he goes off and starts trailing off into the distance verbally, he just says anyway. And yesterday as well, he did an interview when it became clear that he could not remember the name of his own Defence Secretary, Lloyd Austin, and instead referred to him in this way.
It's all about treating people with dignity. And it's about making sure that, look, for example, look at the heat I'm getting because I named the Secretary of Defense to a black man.
Something has happened in the hall here on the convention floor at the RNC, which is, they've got a chant, which is Joe must go, Joe must go. It's not as bad as some of the ones that we've heard in past times, like, lock her up, or the signs that they're leaving on the chairs now just say mass deportations now, 2024. But yesterday we heard from Don Jr., Donald Trump's son, and it was quite interesting that when he tries to rile the crowd, he says, "Who's in charge of America? Is it Joe?" And they go, "No." And then he goes, "Is it Jill?" And they all go, "Boo." So he is creating this narrative that feels like a throwback to the Hillary Clinton days, which is kind of pure, undiluted misogyny, which is this Lady Macbeth is really pulling the strings of the old puppet. And that is the kind of thing that they want to take hold now. Not just that Joe Biden is kind of past it, but you are being pushed around by a Lady Biden, and I think that's kind of where the energy is from here now. This idea that somehow America's been, pushed around and it's being sort of blindsided by somebody who wasn't even elected.
What makes it all so much more toxic, and you've alluded to it, Lewis, about talking about the concern of the Democrat congressmen and women or the Senate candidates, is that I just want to talk about the ticket, because when we go to vote in the UK, we get our ballot paper and we mark an X against whichever candidate we want to be our local MP, and then we stuff it in a box. In the US, you will get a sheet of paper that can be up to 2 foot long, because at the top of the ticket, as they call it, will be the presidential election. Are you going to vote for Donald Trump, or are you going to vote for Joe Biden, or are you going to vote for Robert F. Kennedy, who's standing as an independent? And then you'll have your Senate race, and then you'll have your House race, and then you'll have your education board, and then you'll have your city council election, and it will go all the way down to who should be the local dog catcher. And what happens is that if you are thinking, oh my God, I cannot bring myself to vote for Joe Biden, well then can you bring yourself to vote for the Democrat congressman or woman who's running, or for the Democratic senator who's running?
The down ticket races.
The down ticket races, as they're called. And so there is absolute terror that the fate of a congressman or woman who has nothing to do with Joe Biden might be decided because people are so antithetical to the idea of Joe Biden being returned as president. And so it's a plague, not just on Joe Biden and who gets the White House. It's a plague on who controls the Senate. It's a plague on who gets the governor's mansion. It's a plague who gets in the House of Representatives. It's everywhere. And so the concern in the Democratic circles is from the bottom right the way up, that Joe Biden is costing everyone their electoral prospects.
Yeah, and the thing is that I suppose if we're thinking about the speed at which this could happen, I mean, it does seem significant that the top players of the Democratic Party, the equivalent, the closest equivalent that they've got to the kind of 1922 committee for the Conservative Party in the UK, right? The mechanism is obviously not the same, but Hakeem Jeffries in the House, Chuck Schumer in the Senate, and Nancy Pelosi. I mean, to have Pelosi has worked with Biden and they've been an ally of Biden since forever, right? To actually then have her not just basically letting it be known what she thinks, but clearly by all accounts and all the reporting, working the phones against the president, then you really feel what it is to have someone like Pelosi working against you, right? And so I suppose this could all happen potentially quite quickly, right? Because it is true to say that Biden has been deeply obstinate, deeply truculent. He's given no indication or quarter whatsoever that he would go. But of course, he has to say that, right? The moment that he can't say, well, I'm thinking about it, maybe I will go. Because the moment you do that, that's it, you're done. So if it does happen, and we can't know if it will or not, and it is still so much in so many ways up to him, if it does happen, it will happen quickly.
We should also point out that Biden has just explained he's contracted COVID, so he won't be anywhere to be seen for the next few days. He's now kind of back to 2020, where he is essentially isolating away from, anyone who could make this worse. And it came just after he had revealed a line which was almost the closest he got to the brink of saying, if a medical condition tells me that I should not stand for president, I will listen to that. And kind of within minutes, there was this medical condition, but it wasn't kind of a big one. It wasn't the thing that we thought it was. It was COVID. And I don't know whether his being out of the conversation, which obviously is, outside his control, will now calm the waters, or whether it just takes him off, away from the airwaves, away from the interviews, and gives, as you say, these senior Democrats time to just sort of move the chess pieces, work out, is it definitely Kamala Harris that takes over? Probably yes. If so, who becomes her VP? Who is moved into that second slot? It, I guess, allows a bit of space for them to say, well, he won't be doing anything. He won't be saying anything right now. So let's look at what we've got in case we need it. Because, COVID is still COVID if you're 82.
Yeah, well, look, we shall see. I don't see now, given the alignment of forces against him, how he can survive. I just don't think it's possible that he is the candidate come November.
But isn't it amazing, right? Just quickly, isn't it amazing on this day when Trump is going to become the first person since Richard Nixon to win his party's nomination 3 times, right? 3 times on the trot in his case, which no one's done since FDR, even further back, that we should be talking about the party disunity, the Democrats trying to remove their candidate, not the other way around. Their positions have flipped. In so many ways, Biden is reminding me more and more of Trump in the way that he speaks, in the way that he acts, railing against elites, and his position internally within his party has become akin to as Trump was in 2016. In this cycle, this presidential cycle, is astounding. I don't think we've ever seen anything like it.
And if you have an election that is about strength versus weakness, and you've got Biden unable to form a sentence, off with COVID, stumbling over his words, unable to remember the name of his defence secretary, and you've got Donald Trump, who springs straight up after being shot at and holds a fist up defiantly, I think that battle is over. Anyway, we will be back in a moment with 2 delicious delights for you. Emily Maitlis and Kari Lake, and Emily Maitlis and Nigel Farage.
Sounds like end of the pier stuff, that.
It's good. It's good.
Welcome.
I'm trying to give it a bit of oomph.
And you're doing
energy.
You're doing it superbly.
We'll
no Biden-esque here.
We'll be back in a moment.
So the thing I should probably explain about a Republican convention is that best laid plans just get thrown out the window. You can arrange an interview and then you can't find the person, and you can't really put anything in stone because people are milling around, people are always on the move. Things either happen or they don't. And so the whole thing has a slight feel of sort of just circulating atoms. It's who you bump into, it's where you were at any particular point, and it's no secret, I think, to say that we've kind of been wandering around like slightly lost souls looking for Liz Truss for the last few days. We still haven't found her. Well, it is. I mean, we've been sort of examining photos of hotel lobbies where we think she's been speaking from her tweets, but still not found her. Anyway, we emerged from supper last night to head into the convention hall where we were about to hear J.D. Vance, the vice presidential pick. And just outside, we saw Nigel Farage finishing a fag. You won't be surprised to hear. And so we popped over and we said, "Hello, Nigel. Do you fancy talking to the newsagents?" And he was very sort of calm about it. He went, "Well, let me just finish my fag and then I'll come over and talk to you." And so we had this slightly bizarre encounter, which none of us were expecting to have. And we started by asking him why he was in Milwaukee on the day of the King's speech when he's just become the brand new MP for Clacton-on-Sea. Nigel Farage, what are you doing here?
It's been a busy day. King's speech this morning and here. Well, I had to come. I mean, you know, Trump, I've been friendly with him for all these years and he's just survived an assassination attempt, so I thought I'd come and say hello.
Did he ask you to come?
There were people around him that thought it was the right thing that I came.
I thought you were giving all your time to Clacton now as its newest MP.
Well, I'm allowed to come to America on a trip like this, particularly in these circumstances. I mean, I had planned to come originally to America and to be here for a few months. And I made a decision, no, I'm going to run for Clacton. But given the circumstances, it was right that I came.
Because at one point you said you wouldn't be running in Clacton because you wanted to give your time to the US, but now you are the new Clacton MP, but are here in the US just, 2 weeks after getting elected? Because this feels more exciting?
No, I'm just here for a couple of days. That's it. I'll be back at the weekend. And no, I mean, look, what happened on Saturday could have been the most disastrous event.
But why did he need you?
Well, that's a matter for, his team to answer, not me. No, listen, it was right that I came.
Right for who?
It was the right thing to do. I have friends. I don't know whether you do or not. Maybe you don't. But I have friends, and when they're in having a tough time, it's right to go and support them.
And is that the sense you've got, that he's having a tough time right now?
He nearly died.
Do you think he's having a tough time right now?
He nearly died.
And do you think that's changed him? Do you think? I mean, you must have spoken to him if you're a good friend.
I think that he's obviously very thoughtful about what happened. A dramatic failure of really dramatic failure of Secret Service, who normally are so efficient and so good at what they do. So I'm here to show support for him.
Just tell us one thing. Have you seen Liz Truss here?
No.
Are you looking for her?
No.
Would you like to see her here?
I would see anybody that's friendly. I'd be very happy to meet. But I believe I think Boris is here somewhere as well, which is very surprising.
But you haven't made contact with either of them?
No. I've known J.D. Vance for a decade. Way before he was even going to get involved in politics. I knew J.D. Vance when he was in business. He is the American dream, isn't he, really? Come really tough beginnings, successful in the Marines, law degree, did well at Yale, done very well in business. Very smart guy. And
he suggested last week that Britain was an Islamist nation. Do you agree with him?
He did, and it was half joking, wasn't it?
I don't know. Do you agree with him?
No, it's not an Islamist nation, is it? I mean, there are parts of our cities that are, and the local elections.
Do you really believe that? That parts of our cities are Islamist?
I think when you see sectarian voting, you've got to have a real think about what's going on. And we saw it in the local elections. We've now got, some independent MPs who've been elected purely on religious lines. That's not the same as Islamist.
Right.
That's not the same as Islamist.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, no. The real worry is the growing percentage of 18 to 24-year-olds born in Britain who are being tempted by extremist ideology. The vast majority of Muslim people in Britain do not think that way, and I think are quite frightened by it.
That wasn't the most bizarre of the encounters that we had yesterday, because the day started with a sit-down interview with Kari Lake. Now, just to tell you a couple of things about Kari Lake, she was the gubernatorial candidate for Arizona back in 2022. And at that stage, she refused to concede defeat. It was a very narrow margin of victory for her opponent, but she refused to concede defeat. And in the end, she started defaming an Arizona election official who she accused of having implanted 30,000 extra ballots into the ballot machines to try and make her lose. She has form on this because in 2020, she was adamant that Trump had won, and she insisted that those who thought he had been defeated should be imprisoned. So we sat down to talk to Kari Lake on the basis that this was meant to be a moment of reflection, of unity, and of the calming of political waters. I wanted to know if she regretted any of her past.
I actually think you need your head examined.
Can you answer that?
I think you need your head examined.
Donald Trump has talked, Mr. Trump's talked about the need for a new tone in politics, a civility in politics, a kind of unity. What does that mean to you?
I actually think the tone has always been good. I believe that What we're trying to push is a strong economy, secure borders. These are policies everybody wants. And
You
so
don't think the tone in American politics got out of hand?
I think the tone is really disturbing when the media is calling a man like Donald Trump Hitler. They're comparing him to Hitler.
Like J.D. Vance did, you mean?
Like the media is doing. But J.D. Vance was probably, like many Americans, they listen to the media. And for 8 years, the media has been tearing President Trump apart. A good man who everybody loved before he ran. Imagine having a smear campaign going on about you for 8 years.
Yeah.
Pretty soon, everyone wouldn't like you. And so I applaud the fact that people like J.D. Vance and others, we've seen them, Amber Rose, she did a speech. People are coming over going, whoa, the media was lying and I believed it. And it's so irresponsible.
And you falsely claimed that Trump won in 2020. You called for the imprisonment of those who accepted Trump's defeat, including your own opponent in Arizona, Katie Hobbs. Why did you do that?
Called for the imprisonment of what?
Of opponents like Katie Hobbs who accepted Trump's defeat. Why did you falsely claim that Trump won in 2020?
Well, I'm not going to sit here and go through all of the evidence of what happened. Do you believe Joe Biden won 81 million votes? Do you think he's more popular? A guy who can't string two sentences together. You believe he's more popular than Barack Obama? I'm asking you, do you believe that he is the most popular president in the history? You have to have you got to have brain cells.
Okay, so you don't believe that Joe Biden won the election in 2020?
I believe the election was run fraudulently.
And you refused to concede in 2022 as well, your own contest.
Well,
you filed
obviously you're sitting
lawsuits.
across the pond and you don't understand what's happened. And I'm not going to argue about it with somebody.
For defamation.
Yeah, because this is how corrupt the system is. I pointed out how they worked our elections.
You lied about a top Arizona election official. You defamed him. You falsely accused him of injecting 30,000 illegal votes into machines, intentionally misprinting ballots.
Yep.
Do you stand by those claims?
It happened.
Would you like to repeat them on air now?
It happened.
You think
you know what?
that he intentionally misprinted ballots?
If you
sued you for this.
Yes, I know. I'm in the middle of it right now. It's lawfare.
And he said
guess what?
that
Guess
you
what?
had turned his life upside down. He said you'd made him the target of threats of violence and
Emily,
death.
I'm in the middle of a lawsuit and I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to work. When you're in the middle of a lawsuit, you don't want to talk about it, okay? We talk about it in court. That's where we talk about it. I feel confident that I've spoken the truth. But you know what?
You made him the target of violence and death. You saw what happened on the stage on Saturday night. You heard Donald Trump say, let's lower the temperature. Do you accept the part you played in inflaming the political rhetoric in this country?
You are just part of the fake news and you're lying. You don't know a damn thing about Arizona. You don't know one thing about our election. And you sit there with a smirk on your face. You're sitting over in England, in the UK, in a country that's being destroyed. I guess I'm just asking. And I really don't.
What it says about the
this
Republican
is the last
Party.
question.
That they need to lie, to intimidate, to threaten, because you don't believe you can win at the ballot box. Why would you need to do that?
You are just a sad case of a human being, and I'm so sorry for you. I'm sorry that you bought into the propaganda. I hope that you'll look in the mirror and see that you've been following propaganda and you don't understand what's happening.
So I'm guessing if you don't win in November, you won't concede. That's the rule that you're playing by now, is it?
You are. I actually think you need your head examined.
Can you answer that?
I think you need your head examined.
Emily? Have you?
She's not the first guest on our show to tell me that I'm either unhinged or need my head examining. But I think the serious point in that is that, you know, you're just there to ask the questions, right? There are lots of very simple questions to answer. Will you concede defeat if you lose?
They are on-point questions.
I mean, they're not difficult questions. So if you are straight away going to the place where the journalist who's interviewing you becomes your enemy rather than your inquisitor, we're in a very weird place. You know, it doesn't have to be like that. We're just there doing a job. And the fact that it always gets so personal, it always gets so sort of viscerally intense is something that I think has really shifted in the last 8 years.
There's also something about the different broadcasting styles of Brits and Americans, right? I mean, I'm not too much sort of self-congratulation, but there is just a different kind of tone with these things often, but with American broadcasters in comparison to British. And sometimes you can kind of see that reaction, that there's just surprise, right? There's shock. And doubtless there's a bit of, I mean, she was doing it there, being like, oh, who's this British person asking me these very tough questions?
And why is
Very
there no
rude.
deference?
Where's there no deference?
Yeah, that is so much part of the American interview scheme. I want to hear your impressions, Maitlis, of J.D. Vance last night, because, I mean, he's a smart pick in some ways, and in other ways bewilders me about why Donald Trump has picked a mini-me rather than someone who adds to the general sum of what the Trump offering is. So how did it go down?
Yeah, you'll be very relieved to hear that, unlike Lewis, I'm not going to do an actual impression of J.D. Vance for this show. But he is. Look, the weirdest thing about J.D. Vance is he has a beard, and we know that Donald Trump hates facial hair. So well done him for getting through that first and hardest test in many ways. J.D. Vance, as we've discussed already, has come from this extraordinary sort of story of America, the life of hardship, the book that he wrote after the financial crash. And so he should embody really this sort of perfect character to be at Trump's side, a sort of mini Trump, but half his age. And yet, honestly, there was something kind of muted in the room last night when he took the stage. We'd seen Vivek Ramaswamy the night before, who brought the house down. The guy who was really annoying in the TV debates, they loved him on the stage the night before. And when J.D. Vance came, I don't know if it was nerves, or I don't know whether it was that he felt people knew his story already and he didn't kind of have to push that. But it was just a bit quieter, and it was almost like they'd figured that he was, ultimately a Yale-educated lawyer. His wife preceded him, Usha, and she is sort of remarkably poised, chic. She's a working woman, a lawyer, and she came on stage, and there was a sort of pin drop moment where she talked about the fact that she taught JD to cook for her. She's vegetarian and she's Indian. She said she taught him to cook vegetarian Indian food, and the crowd just doesn't know what to do with itself. It's like, don't you like red meat here? And so there's this sort of just quite incredible moment of slight miscasting. And I was talking to people earlier about her. She's much more a sort of Amal Clooney character. She's sort of very liberal, very smart, Yale educated, fiercely good at her job in a private law firm, a job that she's now just given up. And you just think, oh my God, what is coming at you now? What is coming at the way you will have to be this first wife to the VP if Trump gets elected? It is going to shake their lives up, make no mistake. And I think the crowd was just getting used to them, and they were just getting used to what that might feel like.
Emily, are you saying that among the food stalls outside in Milwaukee, there aren't large numbers of Indian vegetarian takeaways?
Do you know what? The food stalls is kind of a lot of popcorn, great. Inside, the thing that you cannot miss is people now wearing ear bandages. Yep, you heard me correctly.
They are wearing right
ear bandages, always there, always soft. They kind of have the sort of gentle feel of the sanitary towel about them, and they are basically people's attempt to show their greatest respect for what Trump has been through. This week he emerged wearing his ear bandage, and they are now following suit.
Just before we finish, just since you mentioned it, Emily, who the last vice president with a beard was?
Someone Harrison in 1872.
I know it was 100 years ago.
Vice president.
Last vice president with a beard. Last vice
president with a beard.
Or the last vice presidential candidate with a beard. Last vice presidential.
Wasn't Sarah Palin?
No, it wasn't Sarah Palin.
Ferraro.
No.
Go on, tell us.
Last major party vice presidential candidate with a beard was Charles
Dewey.
W. Fairbanks.
Dewey.
In 1960.
Oh.
No, Dewey was the last presidential candidate to have facial hair, but it was actually interpreted as part of his loss, because there was a comment made that Dewey looked like the groom figurine on the wedding cake with that moustache.
And just before we go, we should say that tonight is the last night of the Republican convention here in Milwaukee. Hulk Hogan will be taking to the stage tonight, and so will, incidentally, Donald J. Trump. It is his first address to the crowd here since Saturday night, and I guess one of the things we'll be timing is, honestly, how long the applause is before he even speaks.
That's weird. I thought we'd signed up hard for Sports Agents USA. Can he do both?
Exciting times. Exciting
that will be something
times.
to wrestle with. Do you see what I did there? Bye.
Oh, God.
It's so good.
The Newsagents. This is a Global Player original podcast.